Hey friends, my name is Nate Nims. I'm here with Grace Des Moines, and we have just made it through half of Paul's letter to the Philippians. We have been studying this letter since June, and since we have just passed the halfway point, I thought it would be fun to write to you a letter in the midst of the letter. So we'll be mailing this out to you soon, but I thought I would share it with you now anyway. A letter from me, Nate Nims, a fan and follower of Jesus Christ, to all the saints. Even if you won't call yourself one, I know you are one. To all the saints of grace, may this letter find you with the grace that we seek to know ourselves as. May you be blessed with the absolutely free expression of the love of God, finding its only motive and bounty in the benevolence of God. Even more than that, may you know and live with the peace that comes from God, the harmony, the tranquility, the restoration and renewal that reaches out to us even now, reminding us all shall be well. Grace and peace to you. I know it's a bit odd to be writing you a letter in the midst of a letter as I read to you this letter that reads like a sermon while we read Paul's letter to the Philippians in sermons, but it's 2020 after all, so please indulge me in this moment so that I can share some grace and peace with you. Grace and peace is how Paul begins their letter to the Philippians. And it is how Paul begins most of their letters. Grace and peace to you. Almost 4 months ago, we started walking through this letter to the Philippians together, beginning with grace and peace. So it seems appropriate right now in the middle to return to grace and peace and remind ourselves why we got started in the first place. If you can get a handle on grace and peace, or perhaps we can say it better, when grace and peace take a hold of you, everything changes. Grace and peace not only sees us, grace and peace will show us a whole new way of being. With grace and peace, we can transcend the old ways of shame and of guilt and of condemnation. We live with grace and peace so that we no longer have to listen to that endless internal dialogue that tells us we are not good enough, that tells us we have not proven ourselves, that tells us we are not reconciled or redeemed. We know those old voices well, and we have played their game. We have followed their direction, but now we are leaving all of that behind to live into what Paul calls the phroneo of Christ. There is a new pattern of thinking, feeling, and being in the world shaped by grace and peace, this Christ-like pattern that we can enter into. And it all starts with grace and peace. I am in endless awe of the grace and peace that continues to unfold around us because of the grace and peace that you, and yes, I mean you, are living with. Just like Paul, I can write, I am thankful for every one of you every time I pray, and it is always a prayer of joy. Paul's joy in the Philippians, just like my joy with the saints of grace, comes from this partnership that we have with one another. While this year has shaken many of our certainties, I am certain of this. The God who began a good work with you will be faithful to complete it with you. And yes, I still mean you. God has never abandoned you. God is always with you, and God began this work and will see it to completion. God began a good work with you as you reached out to your friends and neighbors with phone calls or texts or emails. The God that began a good work with you as you struggled to adapt to working from home. The God that began a good work in you as you figured out how to navigate these new days with uncertainties and expectations that we weren't sure we could manage. The God that began a new work with you as you strained to adjust to an online school schedule. The God that began a good work with you when you prayed today because it was the only thing you could do and you couldn't figure out any other way to deal with everything that's going on. The God that has been with you through all that and more will be faithful to complete it because this God is with you. The faithfulness of this God will continue in this movement of grace and peace through the good work of our lives. And it doesn't come to us because of our power or strength or skills or abilities. It is not ours to claim on our own. It is simply a gift that we receive. Receiving can be hard. When we give, it feels like we are in control. It feels like our hands are on the wheel, but simply receiving without doing anything, receiving because we haven't done anything, because we didn't do anything to deserve it, that receiving is difficult. Receiving in that way can make us feel helpless or powerless because what many of us learned early in life is that we have to earn our keep. We have to prove ourselves. We have to achieve and study and work and exert ourselves because that's just how the world is. But that is not how God is with us. There is a moment in the Gospels where Jesus finds a woman who is caught in adultery. A crowd has gathered around her. Amazingly, the person that she is caught with is not there with her, but this crowd is ready to execute her. So Jesus starts writing something in the sand, and I can't prove this, but I imagine in this moment what Jesus writes in the sand is directed towards this woman. I'm guessing Jesus writes, I've got an idea. If this doesn't work, I'll distract them and you run away. Jesus says to the crowd, if you have lived flawlessly, if you don't have sins in your life, throw the first stone. After Jesus says that, it's amazing because everyone has somewhere else to go, and they need to get there right away. We live with stockpiles of shame and of guilt, with self-loathing and despair, but grace and peace strikes a match and sets all that ablaze so that we might live fully into the love of God that is already yours. Grace and peace are yours. Grace and peace are already and have always been with you. God's love is yours. Christ's acceptance has never forsaken you and will not let you go. And this is why I am certain the God who began a good work with you will be faithful to complete it. At the end of September, we read in Paul's letter to the Philippians about Timothy and Epaphroditus. Paul gives us an example of what it looks like to live with grace and peace, to have this same mindset or phroneo as Christ Jesus. These examples show us what it looks like to shine like stars in the world, not for their own sake, but for the sake of helping others to shine and do the same. You can live into a larger perspective of this life as you live with grace and peace. You can decide to ground and center yourself in receiving this love of God. And as you receive this love, as you receive this grace and peace, you become unshakable. You don't have to blow a fuse. You don't need to fly off the handle. And the same inconveniences of this life that used to annoy you, you can now let go of, and you don't have to grumble and complain because you are shining like a star, living with grace and peace. Of course, there will be times when we are shaken, and we won't just blow a fuse. Our handle will shoot off and make sure that fuse is completely blown. There are moments where we fall apart because we are not perfect, and yet we are still beloved, and we still receive God's grace and peace. And if we can see ourselves with that grace and peace, knowing that that is already how God sees us, we can live with our mistakes and learn to make amends. We can commit ourselves to that ongoing work of grace and peace within us and within our world as we wrestle through our shame with the tough, difficult parts of our lives. We can start seeing those moments where we flew off the handle, where we blew a fuse, where we lost the plot. We can see those as living examples that remind us grace and peace is even present in moments just like that. Christ still offers us a place at the table and tells us we will always be welcomed home. Paul blesses and empowers Timothy and Epaphroditus at the end of chapter 2 to be examples, to shine like stars, to help others start to shine so that they can help others shine, that help others start to shine. I am writing you this letter to bless and empower you to shine so that you can bless and empower others to shine, so that you can live with the grace and peace that is already with you. I am also writing you because as October begins, I need to let you know that I will be taking much of the month of October off. My wife Irene has been dealing with sciatic nerve pain and back pain for the last year and a half. And throughout this year, we have tried everything but surgery. And at this point in the year, surgery is our only option. So Irene will be having surgery soon, and I will be taking time off from work to help her recover. We both will appreciate your prayers and thoughts during this time, especially because this year was a year that none of us planned for, and neither Irene or I thought, as we said Happy New Year to one another, we'd be dealing with this. Methodists in the Midwest are sometimes known for sharing grace and peace with one another with potlucks and 9.5 and 13 pans, but Irene has a few food allergies, so while we both appreciate the motivation behind this love, please refrain from sharing grace and peace with us that way. Still, keep us in your prayers. While I am away, I am sending you Judy Wadding and Bob Dean because they are siblings in Christ and they are examples that will be with you. You and I don't need to worry about the work of the church because they will help us to continue to be the church. They will shine like stars that empower you to shine like stars. Bob and Judy will be available if you need pastoral care or counseling during the next few weeks. They are an example of God's love empowered among us, and they are here with you. But Grace, I am not just sending you Judy and Bob, I am also sending you Corrine and Ann and Michael and Devin and Emily and Kelly and Nathan and Patty and Charlene and Tyler. All of our staff are here with you, to shine like stars with you, to help us become the community of grace and peace that God already knows we are. Our staff continues and always has strived to help our church shine like a star in this community. They are here as your partners to work with you so that we can live with this grace and peace that God has already given us as we share it with one another and the whole neighborhood and community and metro area. Our worship services throughout October will continue to be live streamed online on our website at gracedesmoines.org, as well as our Facebook page and YouTube page. Even if you can't join us live on Sunday mornings, you can always catch up with Grace at another time. You can watch sermons at your convenience any time you have available, and you will still be connecting with us and your church family. I will be taking a break from our Tuesday devotions and our Thursday spiritual practices, but the guide to prayer and study will still be available every day on Facebook and on our website for you to continue to learn and develop and grow in your faith. Also, if you would like to be mailed worship information such as sermons or devotions or other materials, let us know and we will add you to that mailing list. My continued prayer, through all the surprises, through all the disappointments, through all the struggles and joys of this year, is that you might live fully into the grace of God that is already yours. Grace and peace is where we got started, and it's still where we are right now. May you live with and receive and experience God's grace and peace. May you accept the greatness of this gift, knowing that you can only receive it with humility and honor as you strive to share this gift with one another, so that together we can keep shining like stars in our community. Until next time, grace and peace to you.